Welcome to the LowCarbUSA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
So, Kalayjian, welcome, man. Good that I finally managed to catch up with you. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Kalayjian has a medical weight loss practice in New York. He's the one half, he would probably say the better half of the Low Carb MD podcast. And has an amazing story, personal story himself, which I think most people that are, especially practitioners that are involved in this these days, have had to go through a personal epiphany themselves before they get it. So maybe just to start with, for those of you that don't know, nor don't know you, if you could just give us a recap of your story, where you started and how you ended up knowing about this and implementing it in your own life.
Yeah, sure. Doug, first of all, I have to thank you and LowCarbUSA for everything you've done. And I'll talk about how you guys have impacted my life in a little bit. But yeah, my story starts really at childhood. I was basically born into an obese household, grew up obese, family's obese, brother's obese, mom's obese, dad's obese. And I tried every diet along the way. Lost weight, gained it back, lost weight, gained it back. Finally, I go to, I know that I have a passion for medicine and seeing my family struggle, wondering if this is relegated to genetics, wondering if we have a willpower issue, and knowing that my passion is for medicine and for healing. And so I decide to pursue medicine as a career. And all along the way, gaining weight, and living as an obese medical student, and then an obese resident, and then an obese 350-pound attending physician certified in internal medicine. And really how I got exposed to low carb was my wife challenging me to lose weight. She's like, are you going to be around for our 3 kids? She was actually pregnant with the 3rd one at the time. And she really lit a fire under my butt. She's like, you're a smart guy. Go figure this out. Go figure this out. And up to that point, the way I would handle obesity and diabetes was like every other doctor. You're obese, you're diabetic, go see the nutritionist, see you in 3 months. Here's your medications. And it wasn't quite as cold as that, but, I'm typifying it, but you understand the general gist of it. And then I went to the literature, and thankfully I was exposed to the lecturers that have come and lectured with LowCarbUSA, like Dr. Westman, and I was exposed to the online community, really. But mainly I was exposed to the literature, Westman's work, Volek's work, Atkins' work. And, it's really all right there. Low carb does better. For obesity and diabetes. So I started there and I said, let me start with low carb. And then I started interacting with the low carb community that you've cultivated and LowCarbUSA has helped cultivate online and watching lectures and interacting. And I went further and further down the rabbit hole. And I started doing, very low carb dieting. Then I started to do intermittent fasting, and lo and behold, I lost 150 pounds. And I cannot unsee what I've seen. I know the power of and the unique effects of low carb dieting and intermittent fasting. And, I can no longer tell my patients a calorie is a calorie. And so after I went through this transformation, I pursued further education in obesity medicine. I got board certified in obesity medicine. And now I've been doing some very cool stuff here in New York with remote monitoring of patients, meaning like patients are in their homes and we have scales in their homes, continuous glucose monitors, blood pressure cuffs that all transmit data to our office, and we track them in real time and guide them and help them in real time. We text, email, we have an online curriculum which we use to support our patients. so that they lose weight and then never gain it back, because we are there to support them. We are not sending them home and watching them gain weight 6 months later or 1 year later when they come back for their physical. We see weight gain right away on the scales. We see glycemia change right away with continuous glucose monitors, and we intervene right away. So this is the model in which we practice medicine now, because I've been through it and I know the help it needs. It needs the support and needs the community support that you cultivated and which supported me in my journey. And we're trying to recreate that for our patients.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at some before and after pictures just before we got online here, just kind of reminding myself about where you came from and that, and with Brian Lenskes as well. And it made me think that if you think about it, a lot, if not the majority of doctors are to some extent way overweight and very unhealthy, following the guidance that they're giving their own patients. And without being disrespectful, I mean, I looked at that picture of you before and thinking, why would I take advice from that doctor about what's going to keep me healthy? And I feel like it's such a relief now that so many more doctors like you are starting to get it. I would much rather come to you as you look now. I think, okay, I need to know what this guy's doing, because I want to be as healthy as he looks. And so that's really cool. You are lined up to speak at our event in Florida in January. And I've even spoken to you about coming out and speaking at our event in San Diego in July as well. But the one in Florida particularly, you're going to be speaking about this whole concept of the low-carb diet, ketogenic diet, and endurance athletes. We haven't had someone speaking about that for a while, so I'm very excited to hear about that, because you as yourself see a lot of your pictures are about you running and everything. So maybe you can give people a kind of an overview of how this is so beneficial for endurance athletes.
Yeah, so before I do that, I just want to say one thing about community and support and other doctors, and kind of just because you mentioned about it, I just want to relay, Brian was exposed to the low-carb community through you, and now Brian went through transformation himself. I went through transformation myself. He reached out to me. We started the Low-Carb MD podcast, and every day we hear from people who have lost weight and who have gotten better, and thousands of people. We're almost at 1 million downloads, and I can't help but think, if Brian didn't get healthy because he visited you, where the hell would I be right now? Would I even be here? And so, in a way, it's amazing. I don't think you realize sometimes how many people you've affected, because if you think about it, we have 1 million downloads. People have heard our Low Carb MD podcast, all over the world. That's 1 million lives that we've touched. You guys have touched our lives. You touched Brian's life. Brian touched my life, and it's just spread like a wildfire. Yeah. So I just want to stress the importance of this community, and let's talk about athletics. So I just wanted to give a kudos to you and a thank you to you, but let's just talk about athletics for a minute, because that's why we're here, right? And we're going to talk about athletics. Yeah, so basically, a lot of the nutrition research was sponsored by Gatorade, okay? It's sponsored by Kellogg's, it's sponsored by Gatorade, it's sponsored by the chocolate milk industry. And so it's been really difficult to look at the data in the sports literature and come to conclusions that are not biased against low-carb approaches. So when you first start looking at the data, you see one clear pattern, okay? And that clear pattern is the time frame, okay? If there's a study looking at low-carb approaches for endurance athletes, for gymnasts, for race walkers, for high-intensity interval training, for CrossFit, it doesn't matter what you do. If it's 3 weeks or earlier, it's a negative trial. In fact, there's some impairment, okay? And we all know this clinically. Once you start a keto diet and a low-carb diet, what happens? You go through keto flu. Your body's adapting. The fat oxidation takes a week to ramp up. The ketones take a long time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks to peak out. And who knows, it may take months, weeks to months for your muscles, your brain, your organs, your heart to actually become accustomed to using this as a fuel. And so there's a clear divide. 3 weeks and earlier seems to be negative trial data. But if you look closely, especially at the new data, if the diet is studied for a period of time more than 4 weeks, there seems to be improvement. And the first study of which that showed that, and a lot of the studies were actually done by Antonio Paoli. In 2012, he first showed that a ketogenic diet in elite gymnasts did not impair performance at 4 weeks. And this was the first kind of study that showed besides the faster study from Finney and Volek, this was the first kind of study that showed that elite gymnasts in a 3-month ketogenic diet didn't lose performance. So this really piqued my interest. This got me thinking, man, can I use this for running, And then more and more data started to come out. In Olympic weightlifters in 2018, Daniel Green showed that a 3-month crossover study that there was no difference in power output. Okay, there was another study in 2017 by McSweeney's group where they looked at, and this was I think Volek as well, where they looked at endurance athletes and they saw no decrease in performance when they looked at endurance athletes 3 months out. So they in that study, that particular study, it was 21 athletes, and they basically looked at the 100-kilometer time trial on a bike, 6-second sprint, and a critical power test. And really, there was no difference in any of those measures. So, and then fast forward, there was another poster in 2018 by Paoli that showed basically triathletes had no decrease in performance. In Wesley Kephart in 2018 showed that CrossFit trained athletes, recreational CrossFit athletes, basically have no change to their 1 rep max and to their performance in CrossFit athletics in a 12-week period on a ketogenic diet. So if you look at all of this data, and then again, Lucas Ciprian had an excellent study where he showed that if you took athletes and you randomized them to HIIT or to ketogenic diet or a usual diet in high-intensity interval training, that the fat utilization increases upwards for 4 weeks. So meaning that even up to past 2 weeks and 4 weeks, the body is getting better and better at utilizing fat. And so there was no difference in athletes, whether they were on the standard diet or a low-carb diet at 4 weeks in their HIIT performance. So when you look at all of this data, you really have to start to wonder, okay, why is it that we were told, and why is it that we believe we need carbohydrates for the majority of sports performance? In recreational athletes, in elite gymnasts, in Olympic weightlifters, in CrossFit athletes, there's a reasonable amount of evidence that ketogenic diet, particularly for a period that's between 4 to 12 weeks, appears to be the time needed to adapt to the diet and for the performance not to be impaired. If you look at a time frame less than 4 weeks, which was the majority of trials before 2005 and 2010, they were all 1 week, 5 day trials, 3 weeks at most. So I think that critical change that's happened in the past several years, which has skewed which has kind of pushed the data more favorably towards low carb approaches, is changing that window from less than 3 weeks to 4 to 12 weeks.
Yeah, because I mean that like you were saying, I mean, if in those first 3 weeks, that's like the worst time. So they're comparing those people while they're adapting at their worst moments to athletes that are operating as they've always operated, and that's a really unfair comparison. We've got a friend who is a physical therapist, and she got a job down here in Coronado about 1.5 years ago, working with the Navy SEALs. And every time we talk with her, I've been going on about how I feel these special operators in country would be able to operate so much more effectively and efficiently if they were actually ketogenic. And literally today, we got an email from her saying that they're looking at this with a lot of seriousness, and that she's hoping that we can help contribute to that. So when we start to have those conversations, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up reaching out to you and a couple of others to back up these claims that I'm going to be making about how this, because these guys are basically elite endurance athletes. That's what they do. They go for days and days and days, operating at a hell of a high intensity. And I think if they didn't have to have this carbohydrate food requirement, and they didn't have to carry all that food, and they're going to have the cognitive improvements and on all of that stuff, I think it's just going to be epic.
Well, yeah, the Army has been looking into this for the past several years. A lot of researchers have kind of chimed in about this, and more particularly over the last several months, the Navy SEALs have announced that they're really looking into the ketogenic diet, particularly for diving performance and oxygen requirements with
Right.
deep dives, and as well as kind of just meeting the overall energy demands that a typical Navy SEAL needs. So there's absolutely a military application. I believe Jeff Volek also at Ohio worked on a study that it came out in April or May of this year that showed, and it was published in Military Medicine, that showed that a ketogenic diet did not impair performance of ROTC enlistees, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna have to review that one and get back to you though.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes beyond that, because once they're in country and carrying all their stuff, and the food requirements and all of that kind of stuff changes completely now if they're not reliant on carbohydrates to keep fueling themselves.
The other thing is there's a obesity epidemic in the military, so they're also looking into this diet for body composition issues.
For
and I know that.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So it's not just a diet for performance, but also to basically the antidote for obesity. And that's, so the military is actively looking into this, and there's a lot, there's a lot of research going on in that area.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much for being a part of this, being a part of the solution. And I really look forward to hearing your talk about this in Florida and Boca Raton in January. So just quickly tell people how they can, I mean, there's the Low Carb MD podcast is one way that they can hear from you, but what other ways how do people get hold of you?
Yeah, so the best way is calling my office. Well, my website is Dr. Tro, spelled out DoctorTro.com. My social media handle on all platforms is Dr. Tro, spelled out DoctorTro.com. You can call my office. You can book an appointment. We're happy to see you. If you have a family member with type 2 diabetes on insulin, type 1 diabetes on insulin who needs help, so somebody who suffered from obesity and has tried everything, I mean, we are here to help them. We're here to support them. And so very happy to see them. There's like a 2-month or 3-month wait right now. So if you're thinking about
get on the list now then, yeah.
Yeah, if you're thinking about the new year, no, it's funny. My office manager was like, you better tell people that if they want to see you in the new year, they really have to come now, because I think we're pretty much booked out for the rest of the year. And I can't wait. I can't wait to meet everybody at Boca. I mean, Christian Assad and Brett Scher and Brian Lenskis, we're going to all be there. And then, of course, there's Robert Cywis, and it's going to be great. I cannot wait. Tony Martinez, I really cannot wait. I know it's going to be amazing. I've talked to them about their lectures they're preparing, and kind of it's going to be up to date. And I can't wait to go.
Well, I really, really look forward to meeting you in person, finally, there, if I don't end up meeting you before that. But thank you very much again for being on this. And well, I'm pretty sure we'll do more of these down the road. Thanks.